Hey, I'm Planet, and this is How to Start with TABG. So, you've decided to try totally accurate battlegrounds. Congratulations, you've chosen to pick up the most chaotic battle royale out there. Now, it might be a bit intimidating at first, especially in watching fancy montages and epic wins. Don't worry, this video is here to explain the basics of the game, how to not get steamrolled, and a general game plan for each part of a match. Also, for the rest of the video, I'll refer to the game as TABG for simplicity's sake. Now, as you may know, TABG is a first-person shooter game, where the main way to win is shooting other people with guns. However, here's where the big difference from traditional shooters arises. Your guns shoot from the physical model of the weapon. If you don't understand what this means, here's a breakdown of how it works. In Counter-Strike, despite looking like they appear from the gun you hold, the bullets actually appear from invisible lasers set at your eyes, which lets me fire over this box. However, in TABG, the gun's actual shape gets in the way. It's colliding with the box, which prevents me from firing over it. This is where the number one difficulty for new players arises. You don't actually have a crosshair in-game. Whilst this might seem like doom, there are solutions. The simplest, and the one with the most payout, is to practice using weapons in matches and in the firing range. Although the way that each one handles may seem chaotic, they do have very specific patterns and quirks about them, so after a certain amount of time, you will get the hang of how each one works. Additionally, you can use the tracers, that's the little beams appearing in midair when you fire, as a guide for where the bullets go. The second way is to use a laser sight attachment found in-game. What it does is that it projects a laser showing where the weapon's aiming, and it is admittedly quite accurate. However, I wouldn't rely on it heavily though, as A, it doesn't take into account bullet spread, and B, the laser can be quite hard to see in certain areas, such as the desert or certain parts of the day. The third, and arguably worst way, is to install a third-party program that displays a crosshair in-game. Does it work? Yes. Is it effective? Yes. Do I recommend it? No, not at all. Frankly, do not use it. On top of stunting your skills by preventing you from learning by experience and getting better at the game, is an unfair advantage that most players don't have. It's not directly cheating per se, but it is heavily frowned upon. In terms of actual combat, there is one rule and one rule only whilst hip firing. Almost never stand still. You need to be strafing side to side, jumping, and taking advantage of cover around you all times. I say almost because if you are using a weapon such as a sniper rifle or something and you're going for a close range shot, you may want to take a moment to pause and line up a shot, but otherwise, standing still makes you a very easy target. Aiming down sights is the second part of combat and, surprisingly, a rather situational tool. Like most games, it removes hip fire spread in exchange for recoil and allows for more precision at long range. However, a large problematic factor arises. The same rules of how bullets function still apply whilst aiming down sights. Because moving side to side sways the weapon and the scope around, you have to account for the weapon's physical movement alongside its recoil, and if you have the sight on, the sight bouncing around, which can make shooting faraway targets rather difficult. Make sure to either, if you're using a fully automatic weapon, to fire in bursts, or use the single fire mode for more precise shots. Don't forget to swap it back though. As mentioned before, an additional issue arises when you have a scope equipped, because if you look around too fast or move too much, the scope will get offset for a bit. This is most noticeable with the 2x scope, where it goes black for a bit, followed by the 4x, where it's not that severe, and the 8x, where it's almost non-existent. To deal with this, simply pace your movement and make smooth motions whilst aiming. Movement in TABG is multifaceted, with a lot of different levels and complexity, but it all hinges around one key factor. You can interact with anything, and I mean anything. Let me explain. Basic movement in TABG is WASD, with a sprint that only goes forward. Similar to Apex, if you pull out your fists, you run faster and can jump farther forward. Moving on how to, affect the shape of your character, there are 3 stances. Standing, which is the default. You move at the regular speed, and your guns bounce around the regular amount. Crouching, which has your character squat down. It slows you down a good amount, and it shrinks your profile a bit, but what it mainly does is that it reduces your footstep audio, and it reduces the aim bounce and your recoil by a alright amount. The third one is prone, which has your character lay flat on the ground. It slows you down immensely and you can't aim down sight, but it makes you a very small target to hit, and it does activate certain blessings, such as the relax blessing. Each one of these stances has their own uses, depending on the scenario. Standing is the main stance and the one you'll spend most of your time in, running around and such. Very good for combat and for staying mobile. Crouching is good for stealth because it reduces your footstep audio, and for long range shots because it increases weapon handling. That's things like the weapon or scope moving around and the recoil. Prone is arguably the most useful tool you have. It allows you to use small objects as cover, and it also permits you to perform certain parkour moves. If you remember, I mentioned earlier that the physical model of your guns interact with the environment, demonstrating how they can get stuck in tight spaces. Surprisingly, this is actually a good thing for us, because it allows us to perform a number of special movement techniques. Introducing the crowbar technique. By using the shape of your gun as the lever, you can propel yourself up ledges, hang off of walls, and even backflip onto roofs. The uses for this are endless, so experiment in-game and you might find a new strategy to use. A bonus technique, the climbing hook method, involves wedging a pistol over a wall, into a nook, or another piece of geometry, which allows you to pull yourself up or hang from ledges. If you're in an area like city with a lot of overhangs, it's a very powerful tool to keep in mind. Now that we've covered movement and combat, I'll get into the third part of the video and the most important for you as a beginner player, how to actually make it through a game. There are 3 parts of a match, and I'll go through each one detailing some strategies to use and some key things to keep in mind. Part 1. The early game. This section starts off with you and the bus flying across the map. You'll want to pick a landing spot and then wait for one of 2 things. Either A, the bus to go over a tall location such as tall work or factory, or B, the line between the bus and the location, the one on the map when you hit M to open said map, is straight. This means that you'll have the minimum distance between you leaving the bus and your location, which means you get there faster. Make sure to not run into any trees or tall houses or anything on the way, and if need be, remember to use spacebar to slow down your character whilst you're flying. Now, once you've landed, the scramble has officially started. This is the most volatile and most chaotic part of the game, so be careful, because if you're not paying attention, you might get knocked out. Number 1, get a gun, any gun. You're not being picky at the moment, you simply need a way to fight back. Pistols and shotguns tend to be very common, rifles too, but less so just grab whatever you can. Number 2, get some form of healing. Bandages or healing blessings, but the healing spellbook also works as well. There's a lot of chip damage that occurs in the first few fights of the game, and we make sure they have every advantage possible, because 5 health can make or break a fight. Number 3, get a strong close range gun. Ideally, you'll want a submachine gun of some kind. Shotguns do work in a pinch, though. Number 4, get a long range gun. Assault rifles are best, marksman and sniper rifles will do as well. A very effective strategy during this time window, especially if there's a lot of enemies around, is to grab whatever ammo you can find, even if you don't need it for your guns. Reason is, it prevents you from getting one shot, because big ammo is needed for snipers, which due to a lack of increased max health will one-shot you. Bolts, because every crossbow weapon does over 120 damage, slash kills very fast in the case of the automatic crossbow. Musket balls, because all of the weapons that use it either one-shot or hit for over 90 damage, and taser, because getting tased is a surefire instant loss. The mid-game. Once you've gotten ready and are stocked up on gear, the next step will be to follow the zones. During this time, there's 2 key things to be aware of. Number 1, supply drops. They're marked in the sky with giant rays of light depending on their rarity, blue for rare, purple for epic, gold for legendary, and can be a good power boost to your loadout. Be careful, however, as you may run into enemies also attempting to capture the package for themselves. Number 2, enemies. Be careful when running in open terrain and entering buildings, you can get ambushed at any time. If you do, use a shield, smoke, or wall grenade to get immediate cover and start healing. You're going to need to have one of these as one of your 3 grenade slots at all times, because accidents happen, and having it as an option is a lot better than having to sort through inventory and then just dying. Once you're past about 80 and 90 health, try to return fire or get to solid cover. Let's assume you got into a fight and won. Congratulations, You successfully eliminated your target. Now, stop and wait a moment. There's 3 mandatory steps to follow immediately after eliminating a target. Number 1, am I in immediate danger? If you're under fire, try to use the tools you have to either escape or prevent incoming damage. You can either use one of the grenades mentioned earlier to block damage, or you can use something like a jump pad grenade to get yourself out of the situation. Number 2, am I low health? If you are, get the cover, ideally cover that's surrounded by all sides, so like inside a house or something, or around rocks where you can't really get shot well from one direction, and heal back up to full. Number 3, am I being watched? If the loot of the enemy is out in the open, consider using a smoke or cage grenade to prevent sniper fire. Otherwise, make sure there isn't anyone preparing an ambush, and then you can go get the goodies all for yourself. And now it's time for the endgame. Well done! You've made it to the most critical part of the match. That's because the respawn is disabled and the zone is now deathmatch sized. Don't panic. What this simply means is that there's a high chance that 2 people fighting will cause a domino effect with other people around. Do keep in mind, if you're not A, the person who started the fight, or B, the person who got shot first, I would advise simply waiting for the chaos to die down and then engaging, aka fighting, the last couple of people remaining. Putting yourself in the large mess that happens has a high chance of you dying to a stray grenade or a random ability or something. It's not worth the risk. To actually win, it's not much more complicated than shooting the last few people. However, here's a big tip to help. Look for high ground. On top of making you a harder target to hit, and gives you free cover because you can just lay down to heal and enemies can't shoot you, it makes grenades easier to throw, and reduces the chance of you being picked off by the final third player, who's always sitting somewhere with a sniper rifle. Trust me, they exist. Additionally, it means that you can spend more time safe when the lava rises, making others easy targets because they're taking damage and they're trying to get to your cover. It's free pickings. In conclusion, while TABG can be a chaotic game to pick up at first, it's actually rather straightforward once you understand the rules of said chaos. As long as you make sure you're A, always moving, B, keeping an eye out for snipers, enemy snipers that is, and C, having fun, you'll do well. I'll see you on the next guide for how to improve at TABG, and thanks for watching. Ciao!